teaching for about 14 years. And for the majority of my career, I would consider myself probably a very traditional educator. This is what my classroom looked like for the majority of that time. My students tended to sit in straight rows facing the front because I was the one who was usually talking. I directed the show. I decided what we were learning, when we were learning it, how we were going to learn it, what the assignments would be, what books we would be reading, when the exam would be, and of course, there would be an exam. And to be honest, I taught like that because that's what I knew. That's the way I was taught. And to be honest, it didn't occur to me that there could be another way to do it. And it wasn't until my master's degree, when I was working on a master's in ed tech and design, and I took a class with Dr. Alec Kuros. And that class changed my life. To be honest, when I was taking it with it, it almost killed me, but it changed my life. It wasn't about technology, although at the same time it was. It was about pedagogy. And I started learning about things like student-centered learning and constructivism and inquiry and PBL. And for the first time, I began to realize that maybe my students could construct their learning. That learning is constructed in community, and that maybe they could be the center of it, that maybe they would have something to say about it. And so one day, as I'm walking to class, I decided that I was going to ditch my lesson plan. And that was not something I did. I am not a fly-by-the-seat-of-my-pants teacher. I always knew exactly where we were going. And I'm thinking, as I'm walking up to, I had this kind of little podium because I was a science teacher. So, I was a master of the universe with a podium. How much better does it get? As I'm walking up, I'm thinking, I don't have to do this. I have a lesson. I can just teach that. I don't have to do this. Nobody will know any better. And so as I stood at the front of my room looking at my students, I said, if you could design school to be anything you wanted it to be, what would it look like? What would it sound like? What would I hear? What would I see? What would it feel like? What would you be doing? And when they realized I was serious, they began to write. And then we began to talk. And really, although they did not say that, that was the bottom line. They said things quite kindly like, we don't mind that you lecture, but maybe not quite so much. And, can we sit on the floor and hear what each other has to say? And so we actually reconfigured our classroom so that we had this huge space, probably this size in the middle, and they all had these learning pods that we created on the outside, and we always sat in a circle in our classroom so that we could discuss. And I found out during this process that my students wanted to make a difference. And the thing about learning, when it's something that your students have decided to do, is it doesn't stay in the walls of your classroom. It takes on a life of its own, and you don't necessarily control it anymore. That day, I learned to believe in my students, to believe in what really deeply matters to them, and to remove whatever obstacles I can to try to make that happen. More importantly, my students learned to believe in themselves. They learned that they can make a difference. They had a saying the entire 45 days, we are not the future, we are right now. And my students learned that there is a world out there so much bigger than them, that cares about the things that they care about, and the kindness of strangers to help them meet a goal that they deeply, deeply wanted. Our schools need to be places that set our kids' hearts on fire, that they can figure out what they are passionate about, where we give them opportunities to pursue it, and that we can give them a place to make a difference now. One of the things that I've learned over and over from doing this kind of stuff with my students is that our students will often exceed our expectations of them if we only give them the opportunity. Thank you.